So welcome back. Next up is the famous Catherine from Meshed in Australia, long-time adopter of IoT and the go-to party in Australia if you want to get into LoRaWAN. She's going to tell everything about smart city, citizen projects, but also the enterprise use of LoRaWAN. Enjoy her talk.
Hello, it's Catherine Caruana McManus from Meshed, and today I am doing my presentation from Queensland, the northern state in Australia, for the Things Conference 2021. So today I'm going to share with you how smart cities and the Internet of Things is enabling cities and communities to measure human behaviour during the COVID-19 pandemic. So just to give some context, Meshed built the Encounter pedestrian counting solution back in 2018 in partnership with a very large Western Sydney municipality known as Liverpool City Council. The Wi-Fi meshed Encounter devices are connected to the internet using the Things network, and the data is fully anonymised and reports every 10 minutes, 24/7 to the IoT platform. Meshed Encounter has been extremely popular. It's now deployed with over 35 councils, many major universities in Australia, and we have very strong interest from the EU, from Europe and the UK. Prior to COVID-19, the Encounter data has been extensively used by councils and precinct owners to support their economic, social, tourism and environmental imperatives. And the important piece here is that since 2018, we've now got millions of data points reporting to the IoT platform, and many of our council customers are actually reporting and sharing this data to their open data websites as a way to encourage understanding of how people are using their key precincts such as CBDs and tourism hotspots. So the pandemic happened, and it happened in different ways around the world. Back in April 2020, Meshed started to realise an incredible opportunity to measure and publish, and we started publishing this data via LinkedIn, on the impact of COVID-19 lockdowns on people's behaviour in specific geographic locations. So we were able to use the fully anonymised, accurate and aggregated data from over 100 locations across 24 local government areas derived from the IoT platform. This enabled us to get a near real-time view of the economic and social impact of the pandemic at the hyper-local or community level. So we're talking at the street, precinct, tourism hotspot level. And that was very of strong interest to our council customers because they were seeing what was happening around them in terms of the state and federal governments imposing restrictions. They had to do a lot of closures in public places. So the pedestrian counting data was immediately seen as a great tool for them to understand how do they prepare safer, hygienic services using their asset management people to go into parks and into CBDs and public places to ensure they put up signage and people are, adhering to social distancing. But more importantly, the driver for the COVID-19 pedestrian index was to provide them with ideas and recommendations of targeted stimulus and investment particularly for those communities who had experienced the greatest economic and job loss. As well as providing them with ideas around mobility and safer public places in order to get people back to work and back to the streets and engage in social and economic activity when it was safe to do so. So the pedestrian index started to gain a lot of global attention. We were posting the weekly updates of the aggregated data sets, and that was being done mainly by Paul McManus and we from Meshed, and we also posted it on our Meshed IoT LinkedIn profile. What we saw was a significant decrease in the median foot traffic in place as soon as the Australian government and federal and state governments introduced their social distancing policies and mandatory quarantining. What's important to note here is that the pandemic obviously meant different impact in different places. So in Australia, we had a very unfortunate focus of the pandemic on the eastern seaboard, because that's where most of new arrivals and people coming from overseas come into Australia, whereas it wasn't so much of a major issue in Western Australia, which is quite isolated from the rest of Australia. So what this graph here is showing you is the tangible effect of the COVID-19 as part of the measures that governments took to keep people safe in terms of lockdowns and limited experiences, work from home and all those sorts of strategies started to play. What was also important to note was it wasn't just the footfall traffic that fell in these public places, and we're talking about CBDs, activity centres, major places of interest such as libraries and museums, tourism hotspots, walking trails, cycle paths. We also found that actually the dwell times of the time in which people were mingling and in those spaces was also dramatically reduced. The important piece here is that the benefit of why the councils wanted to work, 24 local councils wanted to work on this research with Meshed, was because we had really solid, accurate baseline data. Given the fact that we had been deploying Encounter devices since early 2018, we were able to create a baseline of normal periods. So the data for the initial interim report, we actually tracked from August 2019 to August 2020. And so what we can see was a 17% drop-off in the average dwell time across all of over 100 of these encounters across these 24 municipalities. And we do appreciate that pedestrian flow data is just as relevant now as different waves or clusters of the pandemic are occurring. And cities are still really struggling with the economic and social impacts. And even in Australia, when we thought back in August that we'd actually, got through the worst of it, we then had a massive resurgence of COVID-19 cases in one of our states in Victoria. And now we're starting to see a doubled effect with some of the other states also being affected by, newer clusters, forming. The research summary report we have published on Quilla, and I've provided a link there. And if anybody wants to get any further information about the research, please don't hesitate to contact me via LinkedIn. So what was important about the outcome of the index was to provide cities with examples of how you can use IoT and smart cities and data sharing to track the ability for people to see where a place is safe. So this is the NParks website in Singapore. What it does is actually shows the level of crowds, and this is done through people counting data at popular outdoor parks, and it's able to use a traffic light system of whether or not it's low, medium or high, and this is published as a live link. People can then plan their trips accordingly as to when they actually go outdoors. And we're starting to see this idea now emulating with transport authorities here in Australia, who are dealing with the fact that there's been a loss of public transit patrons, and now they're wanting to understand ways in which they can attract people back safely onto public transport. So a traffic light system could be something that could work very well using, obviously, pedestrian flow information. We can also use pedestrian counting data to support social distancing and transformative placemaking. And we're seeing cities all around the world now, because cars aren't coming into the CBDs because people are working from home, some of those spaces are being converted into parklets. And that also enables restaurants and cafes to adhere to social distancing because they can spread people further out on the footpath. It enables family groups to socialise in a safe place. And this particular picture is taken from a parklet in a city in Western Australia called Fremantle. But another really important piece of the use of looking at human behaviour and the way in which pedestrian counting information can help with economic recovery are the buy local campaigns. And we're seeing this definitely with people having to be locked down within their community. We're seeing a resurgence of people looking at local shopping and buying from local traders to ensure that they are supported through this very difficult time. This is a great project by the City of Prospect in South Australia, where they invested over 600,000 Australian dollars to issue 4,400 trader vouchers at the value of $25. These could be redeemed at local restaurants, cafes and food stalls within their city. And it could be redeemed by people, vulnerable families, aged care, community groups, so that they could actually keep the kitchens going whilst there were the lockdowns, the mandatory lockdowns. And the way that they used the pedestrian counting data was to pinpoint within their city the trading areas that had been impacted the most in terms of the loss of the trade and footfall traffic. So I hope that was useful. Please don't hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I wish you all the best for enjoyment of some fantastic content with the Things Conference. Thank you.